Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I am your host, MGCovers. This is episode 40. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. I can't believe we're already up to 40 episodes, but we've been really consistent here in the fall since I decided to do these on Monday, and greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're watching this live on YouTube, appreciate you on a Monday morning here, 2 days before Christmas. So Merry Christmas. Hopefully you guys are further along in your Christmas shopping and getting all those details. I am behind as always, but should be able to get it done here in the next 2 days. All right, a lot to cover in this episode 40. We're going to review the week. I'm going to show you my betting log, talk about that. Also give you a link to that. I got 2 emails this week after I went on that rant last week about my betting log. It's available to the public. It's on my website. It's very easy to see. I'll talk about that in a second. And then we're going to talk about some interesting changes I made to the soccer model. And then finally, we'll wrap it up. We'll talk about the college football playoffs failure by the committee to get the correct teams in the playoffs and why they should probably let sports handicappers decide the playoffs or let them have an influence over who's picked. So, all right, without any further ado, let's dive into this. I'm going to review the week here. Let me pull up the betting log and we can talk about this. All right, so here's the betting log. What we got, NHL up. Let's pull up the year-to-date. All right, there we are, year-to-date. Came back, got it over 50 units now, 51.47. You can see there, NCAA basketball. We had a really solid week. We were up, I think, about 6 units this week with NCAA basketball. Now at 8.55 units. We'll take a look at the log here. 23-14. That's 63%. And the model has done well just playing the as is. I'm cherry picking this some, which means I'm taking the plays that we have with value and then handicapping a little bit deeper and being selective. I only had one play yesterday. That was Binghamton. That was a nice dog hit there at plus 155. Illinois State was a bigger dog. They cashed as well. And then on Saturday, we went, 6-2? Yeah, I had 8 plays total, which was solid. But really like this model. It will get more difficult once we get to conference play. And this is really a good point to make about this. And I've talked about this many times, but again, worth repeating, is that the very beginning of the season, like game 1, I think that's a difficult time to cap because for me, somebody that models, you don't have any data. And then the end of the season, when it's difficult to assess motivation for teams, some teams trying to make the playoffs, some teams don't care. And then the lines are a lot sharper. They've adjusted. They know who the good teams and bad teams are. It's just very difficult to handicap late in the season. However, the prime picking for when the most profitable time to bet, and this is true more times than not, would be right after you have enough data to run your model. Like right now for college basketball. College basketball started, sort of maybe the second week of November. So now most teams have played about 10 games. So you got a really good sample size with your model and you're able to exploit that, especially if the model's good, and it has been. And we're able to take advantage of that. So it will increase the difficulty level once we go to conference play. Teams are a lot more even. And so anxious to see how this model holds up. And we will be cautious moving forward there once we get into conference play. But I feel like the success we've had here in the fall will carry over to the spring as well, and even into the tournament. So really solid model, the way I've tweaked this and made changes to it. So if you're building models and you have one that's working, you can always look to make it better. And I was wanting to make this as close to a plug and play model as I could. And I think I've done a really good job with that with factoring it. Take a look at NHL also. You look over here, we're up 4.89 units with NHL in the last 2 weeks. Had a brutal start to handicapping NHL. That model was solid. I got busy with personal stuff. We had Carolina would have been a play. They won, as well as Florida over Tampa Bay. They won as well. So just a really, really good model and exciting. I feel like we'll be able to get this thing maybe close to 20 units like we did last year, because we didn't start tracking this particular model till late January and through, in a 2-month period, it hit 20 units. So it's a really solid model. So excited to see where we can end up. Now, when I will say this, I got a couple emails when I went off on that rant about the betting log. If you go to my website, if you go to MGCovers.com and you go over to the right, there's a link that says betting log. All of this that I'm showing you here is available to the public. So you can see this 24/7. And it's been that way. And the reason why I like using a betting log like this, as opposed to monitoring service, which I've used in the past, some of the monitoring service were not as accurate as they need to be. And in fact, if you're looking for a good business to start, having a quote legit monitoring service would be a good service. And if you do it the way that I'm getting ready to tell you to do it, I think it would have a lot of credibility. There's no units adjustments. So if somebody submits a play, you count one game, that counts as 1 unit. So if it's a minus 132 play and it wins, you win 1 unit. If it's a 1.55, if you're playing a dog and you win that, you win 1.55 units. That way you're able to compare apples to apples, because you'll see a lot of guys right now, you can see we're up 51 units. You might say, hey, this other guy the other day, he made 43 units in a weekend. No, sir. No, sir. So what do you generally do? And the reason that's not legit, when you see people that manipulate units, or they have like a 5 unit or 10 unit play, a guy could say, all right, I've got 3 quarter unit plays, right? And so if he loses all 3, he's only lost 0.75 units. And then he has another play, he calls that a 10 unit play. And then he's like, we're up, 9 units. But in reality, he's only 1 in 4. So he's not a quote good handicapper. So when you do it that way, you can manipulate units. So the way that I track it, 1 play is 1 unit. So that's a legit 51.47 units. And there are very few people that calculate it this way, but this is the correct way. And this is the way I teach, so that you can know exactly how good or quote bad the model is. But anyway, that's available to the public. Anybody can see that at any time. And if you're going to be legit in this business, you need to have this available to the public, because again, I said this last week, if you throw out some big numbers like, that example before, we're up 43 units over the weekend, and there's no betting log or no monitoring service we can go to verify that, you lose 100% of your credibility. You just do. That's the way the industry works, or that's the way that it should work. And we have a lot of that. And so more times than not, when you see some number that you look at and say, hey, that number doesn't look right, it's probably not. It's just not. I saw a kid the other day, last night, I made $250,000 this year in sports betting. He got crushed in the comments on Twitter, by the way, but it's not legit. He's just throwing out some arbitrary numbers that are not verifiable, because it's not legit. All right, so I want to talk about soccer. This is super fascinating, and we'll pull up this particular log here. I made some adjustments to this model, and I'll try to be a lot of numbers on the screen. I'm going to be very explicit in describing this, so if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, you'll be able to understand this. And hey, a big shout out. I did get a couple reviews on Spotify and iTunes last week, so I greatly appreciate that. So if you listen to this podcast regularly, you want to help it grow, help me out, probably take, maybe 2 minutes to write a 5-star review on there. I greatly appreciate it. All right. So what I did was, if you look over here, the lines, you'll see over here, the teams that I made some adjustments based on the model. So now my lines and the plays that we had for Saturday and Sunday, again, I didn't play any of this real dollars. I just tracked it. Brentford minus 249. I changed the lines. And this is important too when you're doing modeling, because how you factor, how you create a line is huge. And depending, if you're using power rankings, sometimes you can play the top teams in the power rankings. You don't even need lines, or you can do it with this. Like the old way, I think I had Brentford like minus 120. The new way, now I have them at minus 249. So I basically took the quote good teams via the stats and gave them some big numbers so that we could play juice and have value. And we're going to talk about that in a second to see if it was profitable doing it this way. So we had a total of 15 plays, and check this out, y'all. Tracking it this way, it went 10-5, which is really, really good for soccer. The total number of units, if you look over here, it was up 5.61 units. That's with everything. And I was playing dogs. I was playing favorites, and you'll look at these lines, like, for example, Newcastle was minus 141. We played Mainz 229. They were a dog. We played Stuttgart minus 213. Leverkusen minus 238. GA Eagles minus 189. Ajax minus 132. This other team from the Netherlands, I can't pronounce, minus 189. So we played juice and we played dogs. And if you combine all that together, it went 10 and 5, 5.61 units. Now, at a glance, you would look at that and say, that's really good. So if a handicapper tweeted that out, hey, we had 15 plays, we were up 5.61 units, you would think, hey, that's good. There's no need to make any adjustments to that. And this is why I tell you, always look to improve. I'm always looking to get better. So when we deep dive into this, we can actually make this better. Now let's go over here and look at the dogs. Like, what if we just played all dogs? So instead of 10 plays, we would have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We would have only had 6 plays, and look at what we would have netted. 5.17 units. So playing juice and having 15 plays, which is a lot more money at risk, the model yielded 5.61 units. Now, if we cut out all the juice and just play dogs, which is going to be the way to do this, and I've known this for a long time, but I think seeing it makes it a lot more believable. Just playing dogs up 5.17 units. And here's where we talk about ROI and why ROI is so important. So if we play all of that, we're going to risk we got to risk basically about 20 units, 2,100 units to make 5.61 units, which is still good. That's not bad. That's 26% ROI. Or we can risk 6 units and make 5.17 units, which is an ROI of 86%. That's pretty good, folks, right? So which is better? It's obviously the ROI with 86 because you're not risking as much. Now, this is super, super fascinating. If you look at this column over here where it says favorites, watch this. Let's look at just playing favorites, all right? And let's see how effective this was. Now, you can see on all these plays we had value, meaning Newcastle, my new line was minus 269, books line minus 141. Stuttgart minus 285, my line, books line minus 213. Leverkusen, my line minus 269, books line minus 238. Because here's what you hear a lot of handicappers say when they pay a heavy juice line. Hey, we still have value. There's times when it's good to play, a minus 250 or minus 260. It might be, but you can't, the math is factual. Meaning, watch this. So you can't deny the math. So if we play all favorites, now that's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if we play just favorites, that's a total of 9 matches. We go 6 and 3. So you say 6 and 3, man, that's good, right? That's what, 66%? That's really good. We went 6 and 3, but look at the profit, 0.44 units. It didn't make any money. So therefore, you can conclude, looking at the math, it's not even worth it to play the favorites in this particular setting with soccer. Because if you look over to the right, we're going to explain why. And this is super educational for you to understand this. So what we're going to do is we're going to add up all of the money lines. All right, 140 minus 141, minus 213, minus 238, et cetera, et cetera. And I basically average this out. That averages to a money line of minus 174. So if I add up all the favorites, the average money line for the favorites is minus 174. This is math. That's what I love about sports betting. There's no denying this. So there's a chart you can Google. It's called, just Google money line conversion. This is at Jimmy Boyd's site, another handicapper. So we got this on the screen. Yep. All right, so let's scroll down and find minus 174 to find the implied probability. All right, there it is, minus 175. See it on the screen? All right, now, at minus 175, if you average minus 175 juice, you have to hit 63.6% to break even. I'm going to repeat that. That's what this chart is. Minus 175 juice, you have to hit 63.6% winners, not to be profitable, to break even. So to be profitable, you got to hit higher than 63%. Is that possible in a three-way line with soccer? Probably not. And If you remember early in the week, I think last week I shared Eric, my one of my former clients, very successful UFC season. He averaged minus 141 juice, a lot easier to turn a profit. And I think I think he hit 67%. So if his line, let's take a look, it was minus 141. So his break even point is 58%. So if he's hitting 66% on his plays, is he profitable? Absolutely. But it's very difficult to do this. And a lot of people don't talk about this. And again, it's something that all you have to do is I can just basically show you a math problem. And again, let's go back to this model, because this is what a lot of handicappers do, and probably myself included. They might show you, hey, we went 10-5, we were up 5.61 units, but they haven't done the math on it to realize they could increase that ROI significantly, make the same, but wager less and be extremely profitable. It's the same reason why when I say teams that win cover 80% of the time, teams that cover win outright 80% of the time in NFL, a little bit less than that in basketball. But people that disagree with that have never ran the numbers. And that's the beautiful thing about sports betting and sports handicapping. It's basically math. It's a simple math problem. So when I say it's advantageous to basically just play dogs or play majority of dogs, I mean, all you have to do is look at the math. Because again, what handicappers will argue is like, hey, I play juice. I'm still positive. I'm up 5.61 units, but it's not the best way to play it. So you could increase your ROI significantly taking that out. And then if you just add up the juiced wagers or all the favorites, you're not making any money, 0.44 units. And that's hitting 6 out of 9. That's hitting 66%. So that's why you have to be cautious of who you take advice from. I've said this many times, and I want to pull up this screenshot because this is a really good segue. Steve Fezzik, very successful sports handicap, right? I think, right? The problem with him, I just tried to check it. There's no betting lock, and he tweets out and says, "Hey, I'm up." I think he said about a month ago he's up 60 units or something like that year to date. But there's no betting log. There's nothing to see. You can't see anything, which is another big problem. And I think that he does lose a lot of credibility because he doesn't. But he's very popular. He's on a lot of sports betting shows, and he tweeted this out December 21st. He sent minus 510 out to clients. He's playing Texas, and I actually posted this on Instagram. Before a game starts, you have to make a decision from an assessment perspective whether or not that's a good wager or not. The results of the game does not dictate whether or not it's a good wager. That decision has to be made before. And the way that I handicap, the way that I teach, this is not a good wager. And if you want to look at it from a cash flow perspective, if you're grading this as 1 unit, right? He's risking 5 units to make 1 unit. So if this loses, now you can hold 5 units. Now you got to make 6 units. You got to go 6-0 to recoup that. So you got to win 6 units without losing any to cash flow to be profitable with this type of wager. And he's also the same one. This is a couple years ago. He took a lot of heat for this. He played Purdue in the NCAA tournament. I forgot who they were playing. They lost in the first round, minus 2,000, risking 20 units to win 1. And even though Steve is probably a profitable sports bettor, he's probably not profitable on these type wagers long term. Because even if you take that crazy Purdue play, minus 2,000 in this one, he's 50%, but he'd be in the whole minus 19 units. And again, going back to this chart here, again, sports betting is a math problem. If you go down and look at, let's go over here and look at some of these other ones. Let's look at, so check this out. So look at 48%. So if the majority of your wagers are plus 110 or higher, 48% is your break-even point. And that's basically how I come up with the 50-50 game. So if you look at both teams are even, both teams have an equal chance of winning, whether it's 2 good teams or 2 bad teams, You can win basically half of those and be profitable long term. And again, going back to the soccer log, I mean, there's your math on that. So the application of all this is it's very important to have a betting log to track your wagers, because if you do the math on this, it all adds up to this particular example, not advantageous to play juice. Or maybe I could eliminate it, meaning like I probably could come in here and say, all right, I'm only going to play a juice line up to minus 150 and still track those. Because I think even if I reduced it and said, hey, I'm only going to play, favorites up to minus 150, probably with soccer, it's probably not going to be profitable long term because it's a three-way line. But anyway, super excited about this model because this is a slight adjustment, and probably the way I'm going to track this here for the next couple of weeks is right here. So 5.17 units. And you can see basically all the profit was made on the first day. I take that back. Let's see. Yep, 3.54 units. No, it's profitable both days. 3.54 units on Saturday, and then yesterday, 0.34 units. And what I talk about is a 50-50 game, so we only had two plays. Playing at dogs was Wolfsburg and Braga. One was 229, one was 134. You only have to hit one to be profitable. And boom, there it is, 0.34 units. And I'll give you another example. We could have lost one of these games. So look at this ATL Madrid. Let's say if this dog doesn't win and they lose -1. Now let's add up the tracker. Yep, 0.38 units. So still profitable. Right? So anyway, I think it's super fascinating. However you slice or dice this thing. Oops, I did something wrong here. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Wait, I added something wrong in here. Something's not right. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure what I did wrong here. But anyway, make sure you're tracking that and pay close attention to your favorites and keep a log like this because it can definitely help you and improve. All right, let's segue over into the college football playoff failure by the committee. And again, if you watch that last video, I showed you this before these games even started. And I gave each team in the playoffs a letter grade that was based on not only their strength of schedule, but the teams they beat and then the teams that they lost to. So I had Arizona State as a B team. I had Boise State as a C team. And I had SMU a B team, Indiana B team. Both the B teams got blown out by A teams. So I'm going to suggest this. This is an extreme hypothetical. This would never happen. But what if the committee actually used sports handicappers like myself, maybe get a committee of 5 people to actually pick the teams to be in the playoff? Or you could let us know which teams you're considering, and we could tell you what the line would be. Right? So, for example, let me see if I have this over here where I can show it. Yeah, I've already got my lines for, and I tweeted this out the other night before the line was even released. I said I had Texas. I had Arizona State -12 over Texas, -12 over Arizona State. So a team that got a bye in the playoffs is a 12-point underdog to another team that just won. It's not right. So my point would be, as crazy as that seems, maybe they get like 2 handicappers, me and somebody else, or not to sound egotistical. There's a lot of people that are sharp in this space, right? And it doesn't take, if you're modeling, obviously the people that model are going to have, Texas is huge favorites over Arizona State. So the committee would say, hey, we're considering giving Arizona State. What would the line be if Texas wins over Clemson? I would say it's going to be -12. So basically it's going to be a potential blowout. And it's the same with Penn State playing Boise State. I have Penn State -21. And the actual line is, here's the lines. Yeah, look at Texas. Texas is -14. My line is -12. I have to run the numbers. I haven't run the numbers for Ohio State and Oregon, Notre Dame, and Georgia, but all those are A teams. And look at the lines. -2 and -2.5, and then -1.5. Ohio State, small favorite. Georgia, small favorite. And then look at Penn State and Boise State, minus 11.5. So in essence, if you really want to do this the right way, as elementary as it sounds, you shouldn't have any B or C teams in the college football playoffs. Or maybe another handicapper calculates it another way. And then what other A teams would be in there? And I know this sounds like I'm beating what's that expression? Beating a dead drum or beating a dead horse. Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss were all A teams, even though they all had 3 losses. And it would have been much smarter to put Alabama, Missouri, and South Carolina in a college football playoff. Just would have. It'd have been more competitive. So, and that's really the problem with that. It was almost like public versus sharps. Like the college football was basically, the public doing that. People that know nothing. They might know politically, they know a lot about football. And I think that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to have a lot of balance in the playoffs, and include more teams from more different conferences. But from an entertainment perspective, it was a colossal fail. Because how many of you were watching those games actually turned a channel? Like I turned a channel on all those games, all of them. I think SMU, yeah. I started watching some golf videos on YouTube. It was just boring. But the point is about how important it is and how relevant professional handicappers are to it would work. I'm telling you, it would work, is to get some input from sports handicappers. They probably wouldn't let sports handicappers decide, even though if there was like, say, 5 professional sports handicappers that modeled college football, they would not have had this. Meaning, like, if you told a group of 5 professional sports handicappers that modeled college football, I want y'all to pick the teams for the playoffs, none of us would have had, to make it the most competitive, none of us would have had Boise State, none of us would have had Arizona State, none of us would have had SMU. Or in Indiana. I don't know if I mentioned Indiana. We'd have put Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. I don't know if all 3 of those teams would win in, but it would have been a much better competitive playoff. And if they don't change this, it's going to be another colossal fail. So hopefully they'll realize that the way they constructed this and the way they picked it to make it politically correct, to include a lot more teams from a lot more conferences. It looks good on paper and it sounds good, but in theory, from an entertainment perspective, it's no good. So we're going to have blowout. Penn State's going to blow out Boise State. Texas is going to obliterate Arizona State. So get ready. So at least we'll have 2 competitive games, or should. Always potential for blowouts, even though those lines are -2, -1.5. But anyway, that's a wrap. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. One more thing I want to cover. If you've ever thought about joining the service, you get access to all my lines for all sports, as well as all my coaching videos. If you want, and access to all my plays. If you want to join for a year, if you've went this long, send me an email and say, hey, I'm interested in joining for a year. I'll send you a really huge discount since it's close to Christmas. And I only do this for like 1 or 2 days. So if you listen to this podcast or whenever you hear it the next few days, to say, hey, I want to join, I'll send you a link and it'll be good for, 2 days, but make sure you're like ready to join. So this is not going to be like a long-term thing. So if I sent you a link, you'd have to join right now in order for it to, quote, be legit. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in to this podcast. Merry Christmas. Talk to you guys throughout the week. Peace.